We headed to Costco late. Too late for a family trip, but I was tired of arguing. My wife said there'd be fewer people in the evening. The kids would fall asleep faster in the car, and we only needed to pick up a few bulk items for the week. I looked at the clock. 11:47 p.m. The store was still open. The lights were on. The parking lot was nearly empty. I didn't know then that Costco doesn't close. It simply changes the rules. Right from the start, it was uncomfortable, not scary, specifically uncomfortable. The space felt too vast. The ceilings were higher than I remembered. The echo of our footsteps returned with a delay, as if the store couldn't quite decide if we were actually there. The carts stood in perfectly straight rows, not a single one left behind, not a single outside sound. "Stay together," I told the kids reflexively. "Don't wander off." I thought it was just a parental habit. We walked through the aisles. Everything looked normal. Groceries, electronics, clothing, but the price tags were strange. Words instead of dollars. Patience. Guilt. Memory. I blinked and looked again. Normal prices. $9.99. $14.99. I decided I was just tired. I noticed the first employee by the freezers. He stood motionless, like a mannequin in a red Costco vest. He wasn't looking at the goods. He was looking at us. I nodded to him. He didn't respond. He didn't blink. His eyes were too wide, as if he was afraid to close them. We walked on. Somewhere between the household chemicals and the bread, I realized the store had changed. The aisles grew longer. The end was nowhere in sight. The lights ahead seemed a bit dimmer than those behind us, as if we weren't moving forward, but deeper. "Dad," my son said, "it was shorter here." I wanted to answer, but at that moment my wife stopped. "Where's Lily?" My daughter, 6 years old. A second ago she was holding onto my jacket. We turned around. The aisle behind us was empty. No people, no carts. Only a long row of shelves stretching into the white distance. "She just wandered off," I said too quickly. "She loves toys." I looked at the clock. 12:03 a.m. And then a voice came over the loudspeaker. Calm, polite, alien. "Attention shoppers. A reminder. Families must remain together." My wife turned pale. Was that an announcement? I didn't answer, because I felt it was meant specifically for us. We started looking for Lily. At first, calmly. Then, faster. I called her name, but the sound seemed to die in the air. The aisles were getting tangled. We kept coming back to the same shelves over and over. The goods began to repeat. The same row of cookies. The same bin of chicken nuggets. The same employee standing at the end of the aisle. He was always facing us. "Help," I said to him. "We've lost a child." He smiled slowly. "Families must remain together." "We're trying," I snapped. "Where is my daughter?" He tilted his head. She broke the rule. At that moment, the voice came over the loudspeaker again. "Separation detected. Procedure initiated." The floor beneath our feet trembled slightly. The light grew colder, the air thicker.
My wife grabbed my hand. "We need to get out, right now."
We ran for the exit. There was no exit. In its place was a long aisle with furniture. The registers had vanished. The green exit signs went dark, as if they had never existed. The people around us, if they even were people, moved slowly, pushing their carts. There were no groceries in their carts. There were items of a different sort. Children's backpacks, single shoes, framed family photos. I realized that some of them were weeping, silently. "Daddy!" a voice rang out. I turned around. Lily was standing at the end of the aisle, alone. The light above her was flickering. I stepped toward her, and an employee immediately stood between us. A different one. A face without age. Empty eyes. "No returns allowed," he said. "That's my child," I screamed. "She just wandered off." "The rule has been broken," he replied calmly. "Now, a choice." "What choice?" He pointed to my cart. "Who stays so that the family may be whole again?" I looked at my wife, at my son. They looked at me as if they already knew the answer and were afraid to hear it. "No," I whispered. "That's not a choice." The voice over the loudspeaker grew louder. "The procedure cannot be canceled. Families must remain together." The employees began to draw closer, slowly, without threats, simply closing off the space. I realized that if I took a step toward Lily, they would vanish. If I stayed, the family would get out. I remembered how I once got lost in a store when I was little, how terrifying it was to stand alone, how I swore I would never let that happen to my children. I dropped to my knees. "I'll stay." The world seemed to exhale. The light above Lily grew brighter. She vanished. I felt something inside me let go. My wife screamed my name. I tried to go to her, but my legs wouldn't move. An employee gently took me by the shoulder. "Thank you for your understanding." They were led away. The aisle behind them grew shorter, more real. I watched as they disappeared behind the registers that had reappeared, and I remained. Now I am here. I push a cart. In it are items left by others. Sometimes I see new families, tired, certain that it's just a store. Sometimes I want to scream at them, to warn them. But when I open my mouth, only one thing comes out: stay together. Because Costco isn't evil, it just loves order. And families that remain whole at any cost.